Hello and welcome. My name is Zafar Iqbal and you're watching The Mojo Story. During his first visit to Jammu and Kashmir since the abrogation of Article 370 on August 5, 2019, Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid a foundation of developmental projects worth over 20,000 crores. He was in Pali village of Samba in Jammu on Sunday, where he participated in the celebration of National Panchayati Raj Day and addressed Gram Sabhas across the country. But significantly, in his message to youth of Jammu and Kashmir, Prime Minister said that they will not see the miseries that their parents and grandparents have seen in the past. Now, a very significant visit by Prime Minister to Jammu and Kashmir to discuss on this. We're joined by an eminent panel. We're joined by Major General Ashok Kumar, who's a defense analyst. We're joined by Brigadier Anil Gupta from the BJP, Radha Kumar. We also joined by Radha Kumar, writer and political analyst, and we're joined by Dr. Sameer Kaul of the National Conference. If I may start with you, Brigadier Anil Gupta, it seemed that the entire focus of the Prime Minister was on the developmental projects. He didn't really touch upon other issues. One would have expected perhaps he would speak on the restoration of statehood or assembly elections, but he didn't do that.
See, it was not a political visit. It was visit to the Prime Minister of India for the National Panchayati Raj Day. And he wanted to ascertain and ensure the people of Jammu and Kashmir that the Panchayati Raj in Jammu and Kashmir has actually taken roots. And the center of political power has shifted from Gupkar Road to the villages, the panchayats of Jammu and Kashmir. And with link with that was the development of the state or the union territory. So he rightly addressed the focused issues which he as the Prime Minister on the occasion which he had come to was required to do.
Yes, in fact, he did speak a lot on the Panchayati Raj and the integration of J&K with the rest of the country. He said that most of the laws which were not applicable to Jammu and Kashmir are now applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. But he also addressed to the youth of Jammu and Kashmir. If we have that sound bite, maybe we can just play it before we go to our other panelists.
घाटी के नौजवान आपके माता पिता को, आपके दादा दादी को, आपके नाना नानी को जिन मुसीबतों से जिंदगी जीनी पड़ी, मेरे नौजवान आपको कभी भी ऐसी मुसीबतों से जिंदगी जीनी नहीं पड़ेगी। ये मैं करके दिखाऊंगा, ये मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाने आया हूं।
Radha Kumar, what's the larger message that you see in all of this?
Well, I see several problems, and I'm sorry that I always begin with problems. However, first and foremost, this business of local democracy having taken root, it seems to me that perhaps the Prime Minister is not fully briefed. Panchayat elections were held in 2011, in fact, on an even larger scale than the ones in 2018. The problem at the moment is that the security situation being what it is, you know that around 12 Panchis have been killed since the election of 2018. And in their effort to provide security, what the government has done has made them stay in secure housing, mostly in and around Srinagar. So this business of going out in the villages and having roots there, most of the Panchayati members that I have met, and by the way, there are people from all parties, including the BJP, in the valley, they find it virtually impossible to do their work. they have to get police escorts. There are obviously not sufficient numbers of police personnel to look after such a very large number of panchayati members. And that means that they have to go on rotas. They are sometimes not able to go even once in 3 weeks. So it's a very difficult and very frustrating situation. And I would say that it's ridiculous, frankly, to talk about local democracy having taken root. The second problem is that the security situation has not improved in the valley. Jammu is a little different. I'm sure that the panchayati members have greater abilities to work in their villages and so on over there because the security situation is not so bad there. It's much worse in the valley. Uh, Now, with the security situation not improving, you are going to have a problem in terms of industries reviving. It is wonderful news that the tourist industry is reviving. However, it's precarious and it is seasonal. You need other industries as well to be able to kick in these past 3 years, 3.5 years since Article 370 was vitiated and the state was divided. What with COVID, plus the security situation, plus the absolutely dramatically changed political situation, much more difficult situation, industry has suffered huge losses. Kashmir
Right.
was one of the medium to better
Right.
performing states. Now it is in the bottom,
I
and
think
that
I think I think they were back to back lockdowns because of COVID, and before that there was one lockdown after the abrogation of Article 370. But Brigadier Anil Gupta wants to quickly say a word before I go to the
Yeah.
other panelists quickly. Yeah,
See, with due respect to the panelist, I would say it's not the Prime Minister was ill informed or not briefed properly. She needs to refresh her knowledge. In 2011, what was held were panchayat elections. The Panchayati Raj system, and which is a three-tier system. JNK never had three-tier system. It was the first time that the three-tier system was introduced in Jammu and Kashmir. So that is the difference between the two. That is where real Panchayati Raj lies at
but
panchayats, gram panchayats, blocks, and the
but
district level.
But Brigadier
Secondly,
Saab, Brigadier Saab, just quickly, perhaps he didn't speak or he didn't say anything about the four panchayat members who have been killed in last 2 months, and there have been 26
no, no,
panchayat members who have
I
been killed
asked you a
since
simple question,
2011.
Zafar.
Yeah,
When the democratic government were there, when the elected government were there, what the killings not taking place? We lost
there were
ministers,
fewer,
we lost
far
workers,
fewer.
we lost so
They
many
were
people.
far fewer in number.
It does not mean that the democracy is not functional. As I keep saying, and I'll still again say, as long as there's a last gun in Kashmir, killings will continue to take place. We cannot stop that. What is happening in Nagaland? What is happening in Mizoram? What is happening? All these places also instances finished long back, but it still continue to simmer. So these things have to be taken with that. Now to say that there is no improvement in situation at all, security is worsened. I again say, why only tourist
Doc-
season? And the tourist is not seasonal, by the way. You are Zafar there in last winters. Last
yeah.
winters, we had to return people from Srinagar and Gulmarg because there are no hotel rooms available. So it's not seasonal anymore. Even in winters, the tourists are flocking. So these are old points, old wine, new bottle. Or she keeps repeating those points because she is a signatory. She doesn't want 370 to be removed. That is what is the problem.
Well,
Sorry,
I'd go.
please, Zafar, you have to allow me to respond to this.
Yeah,
Number
but I
one,
have to go to
please
other
do not
panelists
ever
also.
make personal allegations because there are plenty that can always be made in return. Remain civil, kindly. Now,
Yeah.
facts are facts. You cannot twist facts. Here are your facts. There have been more civilian casualties since the vitiation of Article 370 than there were in the 5 years before that. That's one.
You want to get to one to
Second
one debate?
point,
I can
you
get with
talk,
you.
no,
Let's have
please
one
do
to one
not
debate on these
interrupt me.
issues.
I have
Well,
listened to you.
Sorry,
Kindly maintain your manners.
I don't have
Now,
time to revert
number
to each and
two
every issue
point,
of yours.
as far as
okay. Yeah.
Panchayati Raj elections are concerned, the BDC has had innumerable problems, innumerable. There are cases pending in court which have not been resolved, even though the resolution committee is supposed to do it within 6
Okay.
months. Now
Okay.
we are
Let me go
talking
to
3 years later. So
let me go
don't
to
please try.
Dr. Sameer. Let me go to Dr. Sameer Kaul. Dr. Kaul, Dil se duri and Delhi ki duri. That was what Prime Minister had said in his meeting with leaders of Jammu and Kashmir in Delhi last time. Do you think any headway has been made in that direction after Prime Minister's visit to J&K?
You've asked me a very direct question, and I will be brutally frank. And my answer is no, I do not think so. Because, I mean, people who are my eminent co panelists here all know that it is all about political narrative, basically an exercise in political narrative, and that also of the Honorable Narendra Modi brand. I mean, Honorable Prime Minister's brand. His brand is that he looks far, he talks big, he talks of things and promises like the only sign of development that Brigadier Gupta just told you and talked about was basically the record number of foundation stones laid and agreements signed on pieces of paper, which will possibly never see the light of the day. Now, you might want to tell me why. The Ratley Power Project, this is the second head of the state, second time doing it, the same thing, but nothing ever happened. Now, record unemployment in my state, such that old people had to be carted from the streets of Badgam and Srinagar and thrown. Oh, they landed and promised by guileless people, loaded into buses, promised hotel accommodation, landed in the streets of Jammu without any shelter in the sweltering heat. And there is ample evidence on social. You see, you can't restrict media
So,
today. It's all
so
on social media. And see, this is development. The economic losses that my state has undergone, is anybody
but
accountable?
but Dr. Kaul, what exactly do you want him to
Delegation,
say?
the delegate, no, no,
What
the
exactly were
development,
the issues
no,
that you
because
wanted him to address?
Brigadier Gupta opened his statement by saying Prime Minister's visit was a developmental visit. I say yes, but I just defined that development. Development is plans and bold words spoken but never translated into action. Panchayati Raj. What Panchayati? Did you see these punches and sarpanches left guileless, promised things, asking for salary raises, suffering attacks and losing lives, and he didn't even care to mention that once. I mean, the question is about sensitivity. We are in an executive governance mode in Kashmir, and I don't see that ending at all. I do not
Uh,
see
uh,
that. And the what
uh,
losses that have come, who is going to take care? I mean, it's okay about 50,000, 40,000 crores. It's easy to speak them about the delegations that keep visiting from UAE and Dubai, 4,500 beds inaugurated. These are all bureaucrats who are forced to announce such bold things, which even normal people will understand is not possible, is not in touch with reality. I mean, Zafar, you are also an. I mean, you're neutral, and obviously, tell me how much of this is actually true on the ground. And even Brigadier Gupta knows that. He doesn't need me to tell him that.
Well, one issue
But it's
that
about the
that that
political narrative.
Brigadier Gupta, just hold on your thoughts. Professor Radha Kumar raised an important issue about security. Let me go to Major General Ashok Kumar. We've seen that militant attacks are taking place in Sad the Valley. There is ceasefire on the borders. That is very much there. Situation has sort of improved on the borders at the line of control, but inside the hinterland, there are still attacks taking place. And before the Prime Minister's visit, just 2 days before the Prime Minister's visit, there was this major attack at Sunjuma. They had come perhaps to disrupt Prime Minister's visit, which was thwarted by timely action of the security forces and the police. That is the issue that has plagued Jammu and Kashmir for so many years, and perhaps a mention of that would have given some indication about the situation and the direction that we're going to take.
The security situation in Jammu and Kashmir is not only the manifestation of terrorists from inside the state. there is an involvement of the state across, irrespective of the fact that there is a peace or ceasefire on the line of control, but the infiltrations are taking place. And whenever any sign of development or any sign of people's involvement in peaceful activities is seen by terrorists, it is natural that they raise their response in a negative manner. And if you see the pattern, whenever Prime Minister Modi has visited or any other important appointment to that extent, it is a natural trend. In fact, the trend has gone so bad that, as against the targeting of the security forces alone, these people have started targeting the migrant laborers, the teaching staff, and anybody and everybody through which they can vitiate the atmosphere and spread the message of terror. uh, while all these things are happening and government is making its move to at least signal the infrastructure development, people will have views and counter views on that, that is set aside. But there is a need to take the people of Jammu and Kashmir along, whatever it takes, irrespective of our political beliefs, irrespective of the organizations which belong. Unless we are able to win over people of Jammu and Kashmir in totality, the security situation will not be absolutely normal. In terms of statistical data, there is a definite improvement. But to say that people can go anywhere and everywhere and the mass movement of terrorists is a direct indication of the peaceful existence may not be absolutely true. But yes,
Okay.
there is
Oh,
improvement and much more needs to be done.
okay. Professor Radha Kumar, a very interesting thing I observed after the Prime Minister's visit. The Kashmiri politicians who spoke out also talked about the situation in rest of the country, the problems that Muslims are facing. They didn't just touch upon issues related to Jammu and Kashmir. Before I ask you about that, if we can quickly play the soundbite of Mehbooba Mufti after Prime Minister's visit and Yusuf Taragami, they're prominent politicians of Jammu and Kashmir. Mehbooba Mufti, of course, the former chief minister, and Yusuf Taragami of the CPIM, and also the spokesperson of People's Alliance for Gupta Declaration.
देखिए, मुझे तो समझ नहीं आता है आपको किस चीज़ की उम्मीद थी, कौन सी एक्सपेक्टेशंस थी। हमारा एक मुल्क जो है बहुत बड़ा सेकुलर मुल्क है, और उस सेकुलर मुल्क में आज जो लार्जेस्ट माइनॉरिटी है मुसलमानों की, उनको बुलडोज किया जा रहा है, उनके घरों को बुलडोज किया जा रहा है, उनकी ज़िंदगी को बुलडोज किया जा रहा है, उनके लाइवलीहुड को, रोज़गार को बुलडोज किया जा रहा है, और यही प्राइम मिनिस्टर है कि कुछ भी नहीं कर रहे हैं। तो ऐसे में जम्मू कश्मीर एक मुस्लिम मेजॉरिटी स्टेट होने के बावजूद एक सेकुलर मुल्क के साथ हमने हाथ मिलाया था, इसलिए कि यहाँ हिंदू, मुस्लिम, सिख, ईसाई एक साथ रहेंगे, पर आज तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं हो रहा है।
Okay, we'll play Yusuf Taragami's soundbite in a bit, but Professor Radha Kumar, this is what Mehbooba Mufti had to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's really such a tragic situation what is happening with the Muslim minority in so many parts of our country. Your point, I think, was that after many, many years, normally Kashmir saw itself as distinct, not necessarily a part of the larger Muslim community of India. And now that has been happening over, not just now, I would say it's been happening over the last 6, 7 years. I have seen more and more discussion of the plight of Muslims in the rest of the country and identification with that. And I would certainly flag that as an issue of concern for any government and for parliament and for all the political parties in this country. But, two things, Zafar, to add over here. First of all, it was wonderful to hear the Major General talk about winning hearts and minds. And of course, that is the bedrock of security. The people have to be with you. If they are not with you, you are not going to get security. And unfortunately, the current situation and previous situations have often also taken the form of political alienation of the people. which has therefore weakened the security situation as well. Uh, I would like Zafar to highlight two other things which I have not heard anyone talk about since the Prime Minister's visit. One is the situation of human rights. Now, look at what is happening with media in Kashmir. I'm sorry to say, I feel there is barely any media left in Kashmir, hardly any opinion articles, and so many journalists being arrested, rearrested. This business of extending all the laws of India. One law that is the most important law, which is about detention. You use the Public Security Act of the previous, of the under the Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. That is one that allows detention of up to 2 years without a proper trial, charges, etc., etc. That is not acceptable anywhere in the rest of this country. Why is that act being used again and again to arrest people? And that includes even sometimes
Well,
juveniles.
let's get a response from Brigadier Gupta. Professor Radha Kumar saying that there has been a selective approach that's being used, talking about PSA that's very much in force in Jammu and Kashmir, but it's not anywhere else in rest of the country.
A state subject, state specific act, and when the acts were retained and detained, this act was retained, so it continues to be operative. That is the answer to it. Now I'd like to answer questions which were raised earlier by Dr. Kaul. He talked of the ill treatment and no arrangements being made for the panchayat reps who are called in Jammu. It's totally wrong, 100% wrong. I have myself seen the arrangements. They have stayed in air-conditioned rooms. They have stayed in the best of localities, best of hotels, best of food has been provided to them. It's totally wrong. And the video is talking of the same gentleman on reaching Srinagar has given another statement. I think he's conveniently forgetting that. Now, as far as development is concerned, if Dr. Kaul doesn't want to see development, it's a different thing. You tell me today, how much time do you take from Kajikund to reach Baramulla along the bypass and the highway which has been made?
Yes, I
Avoiding
agree that
congestion in Srinagar
that
town?
tunnel has reduced
I'm talking of
the
Kajikund,
distance
not
between.
Banyan, my dear friend. I'm talking of
You,
Kajikund.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah.
of Kajikund, please. Then
No, no.
also
I
see,
know. I know.
no, no, please.
The road has
Please see
made
the
it much
road which
easier
has
for
been
the
made
people.
right up to Sonamag. So there's a road which will be developed along the LOC for the tourist circuit of the places which are closer to the LOCs. All this is development. One has to accept it. See, there are
Okay.
other issues also. It cannot be at that pace which is happening in Jammu, basically because of the environment. That I agree. Now, when you say people are not happy, carry people with you. People is a generic term. What percent of the people? The majority Kashmiri today is very happy. I go to Kashmir, as you know, I come there every 10, 15 days, I'm there. And I meet people. A common man is very happy because he's earning his livelihood, he's earning his bread, he's very happy. There is a segment of society which is not happy. They were the beneficiaries of 370. They are feeling hurt because 370 hasn't moved. They are the people who are now trying to spread this tirade saying that people are not happy, people are not happy. Generally, the normal armed Kashmiri, what we call, is very happy. The sense of, or the, I would say, the index of happiness in Kashmir is much higher today than it used to be when it was 370 was in place.
Index of
Secondly,
happiness is much higher,
as
Dr.
far as the
Sameer.
unemployment is concerned, why
Yeah.
unemployment has taken place? Because what did NC Congress government do? Rahabare Talim, Rahabare Seher, this, that, daily wages, employed people without catering for the budget, using funds allotted for one purpose to other purpose, without giving closer reports to the government. That is how they are running the government. Now, when the systems are in place, everyone is
Let's get a
answerable.
response. Let's
Now,
get a
third is
response from
Ratle.
Doctor.
Please,
Yeah,
Ratle. Dr. Zafar,
let's
also ask Dr. Kaul about Ratle. Why
no,
Ratle was
let's get
left
a
people
response from
only? Please let
Dr.
him answer
Sameer
that.
Kaul. Let's get a response from Dr. Sameer
Yeah.
Kaul. People are
as
very
long
happy in
as
Kashmir, Dr. Kaul. That's what Brigadier Gupta says. One thing he particularly mentions about is the roads and the tunnel. Of course, the Banihal tunnel has made it easier for people to travel on the Jammu Srinagar road, but the other patch of the tunnel from Banihal to Ramban is in a very bad shape, and that makes people's life very miserable.
Zafar,
But
Zafar,
coming to the happiness point, Dr. Kaul, you wanted to add something.
I mean, I will be a bit satirical. I think our happiness levels are almost going to match Bhutan very soon, or because that's what the happiness index is in this part of the world. But as long as there are people like Brigadier Gupta and his other people in BJP who believe what they say on television and the narrative that they talk about, that people are happy, as long as they believe in it, actually, nothing wrong with that. But that's not the truth, because there is a huge gap between the truth and the narrative that is generated about it. Now, had that been so, we wouldn't be having this discussion here today. I can't understand the logic. I find it amusing. If the roads are good, then it is because of the BJP. But whatever is bad, if there is unemployment, it was because of the previous governments. Now, this shifting of blame, convenient shift, we are not here on a blame game, sir, at all. We are just taking account of things as they actually are. I mean, and we are friends. But the thing is, there is a point of view. The kind of democracy and the kind of narrative that the BJP believes in is actually not the best or the purest form of democracy at all. It is the arm twisting democracy. Like, look at the things, some of the things that you cannot deny. The frequent use of agencies across the board against political opponents and people who do not agree with your point of view. It's not only in Kashmir. In that respect, yes, the policies of the rest of India are now affecting Kashmir also, because you're doing the same thing there that you were doing everywhere else. But not all of these things are laudable, are they? Not. I mean, there are people, right thinking people in this country, who question them. And I'm sure you are one of them, Brigadier Gupta. You will also question the kind of logic that we are using to generate the narrative that suits us. That all that beyond us there is the deluge. That is not true.
Dr. Sameer Kaul, Brigadier Gupta saying that one section of people is not happy, perhaps those who have been taking benefit of Article 3, perhaps hinting at National Conference and PDP. The Prime Minister didn't really touch upon local politics. He didn't talk about PDP, National Conference, not even spoke about elections or delimitation. He didn't touch those issues. Perhaps the message that he was giving from Jammu and Kashmir to the rest of the country is that he was talking about larger issues, broader issues, giving a message that perhaps J&K is now totally integrated with the rest of the country. It doesn't matter if he's making a speech in UP or Bihar or Jammu or Srinagar, it's one and the same.
Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would really want to believe all the promises he makes. I want to do that. I really want those things to exist. I want to see all those crores being spent on the people across the country, even in Jammu and Kashmir. Yes, nothing wrong with that. But we see there is a wide chasm between what is there on the ground. You see, if you're talking about people being good and being governed well, how? Where? It's executive governance. It's just a one-way process. There is no two-way process at all. There is no redressal of grievances of an average citizen there. Not even in Jammu or the divisions of Jammu, sir. That is the truth. And I think that the generation of a political narrative is just important politically. And that is according to what your politics is. But is that the real linked to the truth on the ground? Or is it linked to the hearts of the people? Is it linked to the minds of the people? Is it linked to real progress? Not just talking about it, not just a frame, the real thing. And there is deficiency. I'm saying J&K has had difficult times. It's still going through them. And I can tell you that no matter what we say or what we talk about, it will not happen unless the people want it and the people have it. That's all we are saying. That's all.
Major General Ashok Kumar, you raised the points about hearts and minds, and Dr. Sameer Kaul also emphasizing on that. The security forces are doing their job. There are operations happening in the valley almost on a daily basis. Even security personnel are getting killed in the line of duty. So that is happening. Do you think that politics is not really catching up?
Well, I think we all must understand and appreciate three things. One is Jammu and Kashmir is part of India by valid accession. Secondly, the abrogation of Article 370 has been done by the highest institution in the country, by the Act of Parliament. There may be certain infirmities or processes in the minds of some, which in any case is under deliberation, and Supreme Court will take due decision in due course of time. But what is most important, and I will appeal to each one of our panelists, that let us leave our political affiliations and viewpoints for some time for the good of Jammu and Kashmir. In case we are not able to win over even the current generation of the youth, we will be taking not only Jammu and Kashmir but rest of the country too much behind. We all need to focus on people, their aspirations, the real challenges, and disregard our political affiliation and differences. I know it is very easy said than done, but whatever, for the nation's cause, I think we all should work towards that to whatever extent possible.
Radha Kumar, a very pertinent point that the Major General raised, winning the current generation, winning them over. Is an effort being made to win them over, or there is more disconnect that has been generated over the last, say, 3 years?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, all I hear is disconnect. But I would suggest that why not have a discussion with youth on your next show? Let's have some young people and let's hear what
Yes.
they have to say. And now I have just two very quick points to make.
Yeah.
If you are so convinced that people in the valley are happy, then why don't you do a happiness index poll? And more important than that, what earthly reason can there be not to hold assembly elections? It has already been 6 years, 7 years soon, that this
Yes.
state has not had an elected assembly. I mean, Major General talks about Parliament being the highest institution. I mean, I would say maybe the Constitutional Court is, but it doesn't matter. They are both very high institutions. Well, what about these people having the right to vote for their own legislators? You know, we can all put things aside for not only the good of Jammu and Kashmir, but for the good of the country as a whole. But in order to do that, we must follow at least some basic values, principles, and rules as laid down in our constitution, as laid down in what used to be a parliamentary procedure of deliberation, discussion, uh, hearing everybody's viewpoints, and then coming to some kind of decision. That all those processes have to be revived if we are to work together. And since this is a conversation about Jammu and Kashmir, it seems to me that the very first set of issues to address over here are indeed, at the very least, restoration of a true democratic process. And that is not a colonial municipal idea of democracy. That is democracy at its highest and at its best, which means elected legislators and elected government that is answerable to the people.
Yes, we'll ask that question to Brigadier Gupta, that why aren't elections taking place in J&K? But before that, if we can play Yusuf Taragami's soundbite, what was his reaction after the Prime Minister's visit?
ये चाहेंगे कि प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब बड़ी मुद्दत के बाद जम्मू कश्मीर आए और कुछ लोगों को ये उम्मीद थी कि शायद कुछ लेकर आएंगे, लेकिन मैं ज़ाती तौर पर यह बताऊंगा, मुझे कुछ लग रहा था कि शायद प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया पूरे मुल्क के प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं, तो लाजिमी तौर पर जो कई रियासतों में कुछ फसादात सरकारी शह पर हो रहे हैं, उनको रोकने के लिए वो जुबान खोलते, कुछ कहते.
Brigadier Gupta, why aren't assembly elections taking place in J&K? All we have been hearing up till now is that let the delimitation process continue. But it's taking so long. People cannot wait for so long. They have to have a democratic process. They have to elect their legislators and have their own government.
No, you have to wait. The government has made its stance very clear. The Delimitation Commission will submit a report. After the report is submitted, the electoral process will be set in motion by the Election Commission of India. So where is the hurry? The procedure is already on. I think just by trying
people are missing the democratic process. They need to have their own legislators, their own assembly,
if they have
their
been
local
missing for
issues.
last 6 years, they can wait for another 6 months. Election will be held. Nobody has said election will not be held. The process is in motion. Now, secondly, what Yusuf Targami said about the communal crashes with government support, it's totally again an allegation which is the biased allegation. All rights, it's being proved, PFI is behind it. These are triggered. This is a part of the toolkit. The toolkit which wants to divide India on communal lines. When Mahbooba Mufti talks of Muslims, she talks of Muslims getting together, she is called a secular leader. And when people talk of Hindus getting together, we are called communal. This is not the way. The definition of secularism and communalism has to be understood. It has to be common for all. There is no bias for any particular religion when you talk of secularism. But by being in minority, you can keep talking of your religion, you can keep talking against the majority, then you become secular. I will not accept it.
So the point, Brigadier Gupta, that I was touching upon earlier is that the Kashmiri leaders who generally talk about the politics of J&K in the context of J&K, now we've seen two prominent Kashmiri leaders rather talking about issues in rest of the country. That's something that was my observation that I observed.
Yes, because we are now one. Politics in entire India matter in Kashmir also. The Prime Minister said, Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat. Jammu Kashmir is part of Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat. What happens in the rest of the country affects Jammu Kashmir. What happens in Jammu Kashmir affects the rest of the country. And that is what they have to, Mahbooba Mufti has to understand. That if she does something which may have recoiling action somewhere in another part of the country.
Yes, Mahbooba Mufti was also your coalition partner in J&K. But can you give us some idea? Can you give us some idea when the elections will take place? Perhaps by the end of this year, or there's still no timeline. We'll have to keep waiting.
Timeline has been given by 4th or 5th of May. The Election Commission, the Delimitation Commission is submitting a report, and thereafter the process will follow.
Yeah. Dr. Sameer Kaul, are you hopeful? If you can unmute, Dr. Kaul, if you can unmute. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We can hear you, Dr. Kaul.
Like I said, I think I am hopeful, like all of you are, that I do hope that good sense will prevail and true democracy will be given a chance in Jammu and Kashmir, because it is extremely crucial and vital that happen. And the sooner it happens, the better it is. And just one more thing, that unless people across the country connect through heart and mind and in the real sense, believe me, true peace and progress will never come. It's a plea.
So it again comes back to the issue of hearts and minds, that have to be one. But we're getting BJP is obviously saying that efforts are being made in that direction. They're talking about development. Radha Kumar may disagree. She says that the disconnect is only growing, but things will rather get a direction when political process really starts in J&K. A democratic process starts and elections take place. We still don't have a timeline. All that we've been hearing since many months is now that let the delimitation process complete, which hasn't completed yet, and then the elections will take place. So we'll have to wait for some more time till that happens. But thanks to all our panelists for joining us today on this important topic, and thanks to our viewers for joining us on the show. That's all we have for today's show. Thanks for watching.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.